Angle shots hit from the baseline, either with your forehand or your backhand, are super effective tactics to get your opponent off the court and create offensive opportunities on the next shot, and sometimes angle shots can turn into winners themselves. What you need to keep in mind when you're hitting an angle shot is twofold. There needs to be a difference in the angle of the racket face. So when you make contact like this, obviously the ball is going to go straight. So the angle of the racket face has to be forward in the sense that the tip of the racket is going to be pointed slightly towards the net post. Now the difference is not as big as you think it is. There's often a misconception that you have to hit the outside of the tennis ball to create an angle. Remember that if you hit the outside of the tennis ball, the ball will go straight that way. So you are not hitting the outside of the tennis ball. The difference in angle is minuscule.
You have to imagine
a contact that's slightly different from your regular contact, and that is by letting the tip of the racket head get slightly more ahead. And what happens is that you create a more sharp angle, and it works the same way on your forehand and your backhand. Now, one thing to keep in mind on the backhand side is that when you have two hands, the angles are more difficult because the two hands are fighting each other. One thing about angle shots is that your swing path is naturally going to be more shallow. It's not going to be as full as it is normally. So when it comes to the backhand side, the one-handed backhand is actually a lot easier to execute when it comes to an angle shot compared to the two-handed backhand. So if you happen to have a two-handed backhand, you have to make sure that you use your offhand. If you happen to be right-handed, it's going to be your left hand working a little bit more to create that shallow swing path and finish across the body in this way. So I'll start off the lesson by showing Sara how to execute the angle shot so she has a better understanding of what she's supposed to do. With this drill, you can see that I set up the cones at a diagonal angle from the corner of the service box. That's generally a good target area to aim for. If you are able to hit your angle shots in that area, it will either result in a winner, or if your opponent gets to the ball, you'll have the entire court to work with. So Sara in the beginning had some trouble with getting the ball to angle off. A lot of her forehand angle shots were going in the target area, but they were a little bit towards the center of the service box. So I explained to her the concept of angle the racket face at the moment of contact and a more shallow swing path with topspin. This is a finesse shot that doesn't require a lot of body involvement. This is a stroke that's executed with the hand. It goes into the category of a feel shot or a touch shot, and this is a very important distinction. If you attempt to hit an angle shot with full speed, with full body involvement, this is going to be very difficult to do. Now it's important that the angle shot has a lot of topspin, so vertical swing path is crucial, and this is one of the rare circumstances where you can work the ball more with your forearm as opposed to a regular forehand where you should try to get the power from the entire body and not the wrist or the forearm. So the first progression is just out of a stationary position, trying to get the target area, and once Sara was able to master that, the next progression was to get her a little bit on the run and try to execute the angle shot on the run. Generally, the more off the court you are, in other words, the closer to the doubles alleys you are, the easier the angles become. On the other hand, the closer to the baseline you are, the more difficult it is to create angles. So this is something that you have to keep in mind when you're playing, and that is to not attempt angle shots when you're in the middle of the court. Now once I put Sara on the run, it was a little bit more challenging for her at first to get the right timing for the angle shot and to get the correct angle of the racket face, because it's always more difficult to execute a specific technique while on the move. However, after a few reps, she got a pretty good feel for it, and now it was time for the next progression, which is me feeding the ball from the other side and giving her more pace. Similar to a drop shot, the more pace the incoming ball has, the easier it is to execute an angle shot. Because the angle shot belongs to the finesse category of strokes, it is very useful to do an angle shot in conjunction with hitting the ball very hard. Players have to have the ability to switch from hitting their normal speed on the ground strokes to be able to switch to a finesse shot and angle the ball off the court. So in this drill, I instructed Sara to alternate between hard shots down the line and angle shots cross court. So now it was time to move over to the backhand side, and interestingly, as I stated in the intro, the two-handed backhand provides more challenges when it comes to creating angles simply because the hands are fighting each other when we attempt a very steep vertical swing path. It is for that reason that angles are a lot easier to execute either with a one-handed slice backhand or a one-handed topspin backhand. There we have the freedom to be as vertical as we want to be when executing the topspin shot or the slice shot. Having said that, it is not impossible to do an angle with a two-handed backhand, and Sara did a pretty good job. And the progressions were the same as on the forehand. We started with drop feeds, then we progressed trying to execute angles on the run. And then of course, I gave her more pace with a feed from the other side where she was trying to angle the backhand off into the target area. Some female players will seldomly utilize slice backhands, and that is the case with Sara. I attempted to teach her the slice angled backhand, and I demonstrated a few so she can get an idea of what this shot is supposed to look like. But in this case, her one-handed slice backhand technique had a lot of fundamental flaws in it, and is one of those scenarios where it would be wrong to try to learn an angled slice backhand before learning the fundamentals of a regular slice backhand. So we're going to feature that in another lesson, working on Sara's one-handed backhand slice, and once she gets comfortable with that, we can start thinking about some variations of the one-handed slice backhand. So we tried a few more two-handed angled backhands, and she did a really good job getting the balls into the target. And now it was time to try to hit forehand and backhand angle shots on the run, which was the final progression. Sara did a phenomenal job angling the balls off on the run, which is something that's very difficult to do and requires a high skill level. I encourage everyone to practice angle shots, because if you don't practice angle shots, you are very unlikely going to pull them out in a match situation. You should widen your repertoire as a tennis player as much as possible. And remember, when you work on different aspects of your game, they are more likely going to appear in a match situation and help you out tremendously.